to show you the model railroad, and I'll get behind the camera, so follow me. Okay, so here's the model railroad back here, and also it's an HO gauge. And here's some American flyers, it looks like, and also 25 cents per train. Pretty cool. And also, it allows the train to run, which is pretty nice. What you see right behind me is Cora Texas Plantation 108. Cora Texas Plantation 108 was built by Henry Kirk Porter in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1897 and is the 1783rd steam locomotive built by that factory and is an 044T tank engine Forney type steam locomotive. Cora Texas Plantation 108 was built to burn coal and originally built for Andrew H. Gay, a dealer at Platte, Louisiana, then sold to the Union Plantation and numbered and given the road name is Cora Texas Plantation 1 at White Castle, Louisiana, then renumbered 805, then later on was numbered as 108, then sold to El Rey Coke Service Incorporated dealer in 1953, sold to Harold Allen Casimir Samborski at Ann Arbor, Michigan. Then in 1972 sold to Marriott Corporation in Dayton, Ohio. Then in 1979 was moved to Gurnee, Illinois. Then 1983 was donated to the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois. And then came to be part of the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, when the museum was formerly located on 15th and Platte Street, and then when it was moved with the museum to Brighton Boulevard as well, and can be seen on the platform level as well as, and can be seen at the new location where it is today and seen on platform level. And this locomotive, however, is believed to have been used probably for elevated train lines. The Forney and Central Platte Valley Railway coach was built by Jyväskylä Ironworks in Sweden in 1909 and is a Swedish rail combo car. The Forney and Central Platte Valley Railway coach was originally used for a railway in Sweden. This combination car is one of two of its kind brought to the United States from Sweden. The car has 4 rooms, 2 of which are the size of small closets. The 2 small rooms are a toilet closet and a mail sorting room. The 2 larger areas carried passengers and baggage. Also, this car then came over to America and named with the railroad as Forney and Central Platte Valley Railway. Also, this car went to be part of Midwest Central Railroad in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and then purchased by the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, and the museum was formerly located on 15th and Platte Street, and then when it was moved with the museum to Brighton Boulevard as well, and can be seen on the platform level as well. Also, this car is even a coach and a caboose from Sweden, a coach and a caboose at the same time, and from Sweden as well, and seen at the Forney Museum here in Denver today.
Okay, as you could see here, here's a bell that it's next to the big boy, and you can ring it, but it says here, ring only once, and I'll ring it with me behind the camera and me in front of the camera, so here it goes. And that's how you see right behind us the Cagney Brothers Steam Locomotive.
The Cagney Brothers locomotive was built by the Cagney Locomotive Works around the late 1800s or the 1900s, and is a 440 American type steam locomotive. This locomotive was built to run on 15-inch scale tracks and was used as an attraction at an amusement park, maybe an amusement park, or maybe was used here in Denver, Colorado at Lakeside Amusement Park, or maybe somewhere else. It may have been used to haul the train. Also, the locomotive's number is unknown, and it burnt coal. Also, this locomotive was retired and then came to be part of the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado afterwards.
Okay, what you see right here is the Cagney line cars. These are here on display in the museum behind the steam locomotive, and so it seems okay to sit in these. It looks like they may have been used at an amusement park as well. Okay, so this bell you see right here is a railroad bell in the 1934 president of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad presented to the bell, Otto Kohler, the designer of the famous Royal Blue train. The bell came from the Royal Blue locomotive, and says here, ring it gently. Go now. And that's how it's done. What you see right behind me is Denmark Railway 7.
Denmark Railway 7 was built by Henschel & Son in Kassel, Germany in 1930, and is the 21839 steam locomotive built by that factory, and is an 040T tank engine, four-wheeler type steam locomotive. This locomotive was used for and has worked for an unknown Danish railway line in Denmark, as if it was on the Denmark Railway. Also, this locomotive was built to run on a 600 millimeter gauge rail line over in Denmark. Later on, the locomotive was retired, and then in 1961, the locomotive was sold to Arthur Seifert. And then in 1962, Arthur sold the locomotive to the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, and the locomotive was moved over to the United States by ship from the European country and came into Denver and put in the museum's collection in 1962. Then, in the 1990s, the locomotive had been moved over to the new location of the museum, and I think it was hauled on a flatbed when transferring. Also, the locomotive was moved into the museum building and put on the platform level and can be seen here on display today.
What you see right behind me is Union Pacific 4005.
Union Pacific 4005 was built by Alco in Schenectady, New York in 1941 and is the 9576th steam locomotive built by that factory, and is a 4884 big boy type steam locomotive, and this locomotive is known as a big boy, and the locomotive's class is 48841. The big boys are one of the articulated steam locomotives built. This locomotive is known to be the largest steam locomotive in the world, one of the largest. And when Big Boy 4000 rolled out of the factory in Schenectady, New York, one of the guys climbed on the pilot deck and chalked on the smoke box door and wrote Big Boy on it, and that's how these locos got the name Big Boy. Also, the Big Boys ran between Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Ogden, Utah. 4005 hauled freight up Sherman Hill in Wyoming when it was still operating. In 1946, 4005 was the only big boy converted to burn oil. The test lasted through March 1948, but the firebox design did not allow the oil fire to develop sufficient heat to produce the required steam pressure. So Union Pacific 4005 was returned to coal. Also in 1953, Union Pacific 4005 was in a train wreck, and it was the only one of its type that was involved in a train wreck. Also, Union Pacific 4005 was retired and was in storage at Green River, Wyoming, and became part of Union Pacific's Heritage Collection, housed in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Then in 1970, the locomotive was donated to the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, when the museum was by the Platte River, and in the 1990s, Union Pacific 4005 was moved on panel tracks to the new location of the Forney Museum of Transportation on Brighton Boulevard and can be seen on display track level as well. Also, Union Pacific 4005 is one of 8 surviving big boys left in the world today and can be found here. 4005 can be found here at the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado today. And also you can even step on the footplate of the locomotive and view the cab. And the cab is open for... The inside of the cab is open for the museum's event, Big Boy Weekend, as well.
What you see right behind me is Union Pacific 900,099.
Union Pacific 90,099 was built in 1909 and is a rotary snowblower. This rotary snowblower was originally built for the Laramie, North Park, and Pacific Railroad, as Laramie and Laramie North Park and Pacific 099, and the line went 111 miles line through from Laramie to Wyoming, Wyoming to Comont, Colorado. In 1935, the Union Pacific gained control and ran the line under the Laramie North Park and Western name until 1951, when the companies merged the line, becoming the Comont branch of the Union Pacific. The rotary snowblower was then renumbered Union Pacific 90,099. The rotary mechanism at the front of the plow was operated by a self-contained steam engine inside the snowplow, but the plow could not move under its own power. It had to be pushed by 3 or 4 locomotives from the rear. With this assistance, it was apparently able to clear snowdrifts as high as 15 inches. Also, Union Pacific 90,099 has a tender behind it that was once a Vanderbilt tender from a steam engine. Then, later on, Union Pacific 90,099 came to be part of the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, when the museum was located on 15th and Platte Street, and along with the other museum equipment that got moved to Brighton Boulevard. And this rotary snowblower can be seen here at the Forney Museum of Transportation, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago Northwestern 444.
Chicago Northwestern 444 was built by Alco in Schenectady, New York in 1906 and is the 385/26th steam locomotive built by that factory, and is a 260 10-wheeler type steam locomotive and is an R1 class steam locomotive. Chicago Northwestern 444 was once used on the Chicago Western Railroad many years ago, and I think it hauled freight and maybe passenger during this locomotive's career on the Chicago Northwestern Railroad. Then in the 1950s, Chicago Northwestern 444 was retired, and then in 1958 was sold to Black Hills Central Railroad in Hill City, South Dakota. Then in 1968, the locomotive was sold to the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, and was part of the museum's collection when the museum was located on 15th and Platte Street. Then, along with other exhibits that were moved to the new location of the Forney Museum, Chicago Northwestern 444 got moved on panel trucks to the new side of the museum on Brighton Boulevard. Also, Chicago Northwestern 444 is one of 3 surviving Chicago Northwestern 460s left in the world today, and Chicago Northwestern 444 can be found here at the Forney Museum of Transportation here in Denver, Colorado today.
you see right behind me is Denver Tramway 77.
Denver Tramway Company 77 was built by Wober Carriage Company in Denver, Colorado in 1906 and is a streetcar. Denver Tramway Company 77 was used on the more heavily patronized Northwest Denver Berkeley line, and the Denver Northwestern Railways ran to Golden and Leyden. Denver Tramway Company 77 was assigned to the Berkeley line and pulled trailers during rush hour. Denver Tramway Company 77 was operated by two people. The conductor was in charge of operating the car, collecting the fares in the center of the car, this signaling to the motorman when to go forward, stop, or back up by a series of bell rings. In the 1930s, streetcars were beginning to be replaced by petroleum-fueled and electric trolley buses. In 1946, Denver Tramway Corp. Disposed of all of the 76 through 78 series, including this car. Although this car was never scrapped, Denver Tramway Company 77 was found on a private property near Conifer, Colorado, being used as a playhouse by the owner's children. In 1978, Denver Tramway Company 77 was acquired and moved to the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, and in 2014, restoration was complete by the museum volunteers and can be seen on display as well.
You see right behind me is Denver and Rio Grande 1447.
Denver and Rio Grande 1447 was built by the Denver and Rio Grande Burnham shops in Denver, Colorado in 1945 and is an all-steel cupola caboose. Denver and Rio Grande 1447 was used for the standard gauge Denver and Rio Grande Railroad on the back of freight trains many years ago, and also was used as the train crew's office as well. Then later on, this caboose was retired and then was stored at the former Denver and Rio Grande Burnham shops in Denver, Colorado, which is Marcus Rail, and it is also the Union Pacific Railroad's Burnham yard as well, and also it may have once been owned by the Greeley Freight House Museum in Greeley, Colorado, which it is the Colorado Model Railroad Museum as well. And it may have stayed in the yard it was in. Also, it was spray painted with graffiti whenever it was in the yard, and eventually it got removed, and the caboose was repainted by the Museum of Railway Workers. Then, in 2017, it was bought by the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, and in 2018 it was relocated to this spot at the museum and seen on display in the parking lot where it is today.
Okay, I'm going to show you all the exhibits along the fence on the platform. So I'll get behind the camera and show you all around. Here we go. Got that part. Okay, so right next to the passenger car from Sweden. Those look like automobiles, but let's show the train ones. Okay, right here are some lanterns. You can see they're numbered, which you could, if you want to pause and read, you can. Let's go this way. Here are like some facts about the big boy, which is right here. And this is a cutaway sketching of how a steam locomotive works. You can see it's all labeled nicely. Sorry about that light. Yeah, pretty interesting. There's a model of the big boy that is right here at the museum. Show more. So we're just going along the fence Here's a picture of 4014. These pictures were taken right before I uploaded this video. Yeah. And here are all the vehicles. And that shows 150 years of the Transcontinental Railroad's completion. And this is a Mccoy style lubricator, an example of what it looks like. That's Elijah Mccoy, or Eli for short. He's the man that invented these. Thanks to him, no more oiling cans would have been lost. You could even push it. Oh, wow. You can see. Alright, it shakes a bit. And here's the coach. Some China. It's used on the railroad. These may have been used on the Santa Fe Railroad. Here's some line-out trains and a few China plates. Pennsylvania Railroad. Wow. And here's what the dining cars look like. China plates. And Amtrak. A hard hat. Teacup and teapot, and I wonder what that one is in the middle. There's some old pictures and old brochures, or that might have been a schedule, I think. The California Zephyr, which makes a stop here in Denver, only on Amtrak these days. Here's a board right here, and unusual looking steam locomotive. This is like an old kiddie toy. So if you want to read that, feel free to pause. And here's some information about 715, which is this car right here. Yeah. That's all I have to show. What you see right behind me is Denver and Rio Grande 804.
Denver and Rio Grande 804 was built by American Car and Foundry in St. Charles, Missouri in 1927 and is a dining car. Denver and Rio Grande 804 was used on a Denver and Rio Grande streamlined passenger train many years ago, and also the car is also named Pikes Peak. Denver and Rio Grande 804 was also used for passengers eating on board at tables inside breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Also, Denver and Rio Grande 804 was used with passenger cars painted in the same paint scheme when used on passenger trains on the railroad as well. Then later on, Denver and Rio Grande 804 was retired and then came to be part of the Forney Museum of Transportation when the museum was located on 15th and Platte, and then moved to Brighton Boulevard. And also, you'll also see there are mannequins inside as well.
What you see right behind me is Denver and Rio Grande 3006.
Denver and Rio Grande 3006 was built by Electromotive Division in LaGrange, Illinois in 1962 and is the 271/40th diesel locomotive built by that factory and is a GP30 type diesel locomotive. This locomotive spent its life working for the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad on the standard gauge line and was used hauling freight on the railroad as well, and it was also even used for hauling passenger trains as well. Then, in like the late 1990s, it was later retired and later was stored in Burnham shops in Denver, Colorado, which is Marcus Rail, and it is also the Union Pacific Railroad's Burnham Yards as well, and also it was spray painted with graffiti on it. Then in 2018, it was moved to the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, and became part of the collection and put in this spot where it is seen today.
say 2018, 2019, as well as these tools and such. Doubles, digs, all those. Even that hockey right there as well. What you see right behind me is Union Pacific 93053.
Union Pacific 903053 was built by the Industrial Works of Bay City, Michigan in 1901 and is a derrick crane. This crane was used for the Union Pacific Railroad and originally numbered as Union Pacific 02801 and then later on renumbered as Union Pacific 903053. Union Pacific 903053's lift capacity is 40 tons and it was used in the 23rd Street Yard in Denver, Colorado and was used to move shifted loads on rail cars and to position rail car truck wheels during a change. Originally, Union Pacific 903053 was made to run on steam from a coal-fired boiler, and then by 1967, it had been converted to run on compressed air as air pressure was available throughout the 23rd Street Yard to power various tools and equipment. Also, Union Pacific 903053 was used as a maintenance of way piece on the Union Pacific as well. Then later on, Union Pacific 903053 was retired and came to be part of the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, when the museum was located on 15th and Platte and moved to the new spot of the museum on Brighton Boulevard as well, and this crane can also be seen here on display at the museum as well. Also, Union Pacific 903053 is the oldest surviving derrick crane built by the Industrial Works of Bay City, Michigan.
What you see right behind me is Denver and Salt Lake 715.
Denver and Salt Lake 715 was built by Pullman in 1906 and is a passenger coach. Denver and Salt Lake 715 was used on passenger trains many years ago on the Denver and Salt Lake Railroad. Also, the inside of this car is designed with fancy furniture and cushions and all detailed inside. Then later on, Denver and Salt Lake 715 was retired and then came to be part of the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 301.
Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 301 was built by Pullman in 1902 and is a business car. Originally, this car was built as a wood-bodied car and was used by the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad. This car was used on passenger trains on the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad many years ago at the back of passenger trains. It was originally numbered as Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 208. Then it was renumbered as Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 301. Then it was named Iowa. In 1930, the wooden body was sheathed in steel and the car was given steel frame trucks, and it was bought by the Colorado and Southern Railroad and was numbered as Colorado and Southern 900. In 1949, air conditioning was installed and was sold to Richard McKinley. Then this car was sold to the Polk family of Chicago and it got repainted saying Polk Brothers with it saying on the sides Illinois Sesquicentennial as numbered PB1. They owned a chain of appliance stores in the Chicago area known as the Polk Brothers. This car was used in 1968 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Illinois becoming a state. Then the car was then later retired, and in 1978 it came to be part of the Forney Museum of Transportation when it was located on 15th and Platte Street, and then later moved to this spot on Brighton Boulevard, and also it is on track level of the museum as well.
What you see right behind me is Colorado and Southern 10501.
Colorado and Southern 10501 was built in 1906 and is a wooden caboose. Colorado and Southern 10501 has a Burlington route sign on the side as well. Colorado and Southern 10501 was used on the back of freight trains on the Colorado and Southern Railroad for many years and was used as the train crew's office as well when being used. Also, I do believe that this caboose served on freight trains from Denver, Colorado, then south to Trinidad and north into Wyoming. Then, in 1977, Colorado and Southern 10501 was retired and came to be part of the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, when it was located on 15th and Platte Street in Denver till the 1990s, when the museum relocated to being on Brighton Boulevard. Also, Colorado and Southern 10501 can also be seen here on display at the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Denver Tramway's 40.
Denver Tramway Company 40 was built by Laclede Car Company in St. Louis, Missouri in 1886 and is a horse car. Denver Tramway Company 40 was originally numbered as 271 and then either in 1888 or later on was renumbered to 40 and later on was renumbered as 901. This trolley was used on streets of Denver, pulled by horses and hauled people from one trolley stop to another. However, the Denver Tramway converted from cable to electric operation. Most of the cable cars were burned. This car survived and was used as a tool shed by the Denver Regional Transportation District. When a Mr. Horn, a former RTD employee, heard that Denver Tramway Company Trolley 40 was going to be destroyed, but then he arranged to purchase it and moved it to his ranch near Conifer. Then the car was purchased by the Forney Museum of Transportation in Denver, Colorado, and Bill Wright of Fort Collins, Colorado, coordinated its extensive restoration. Also, Denver Tramway Company 40 can also be seen here on display at the Forney Museum of Transportation, where it is preserved today and can be seen on platform level.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed learning about trains with me today, and Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show. Also, I hope to see you all again.